So let me see. So we're in the middle of a series. I'm going to talk about visioning a little bit later. I'll talk about kind of the context of it, but let me begin with this, because I think you can identify with it. It's been over 2 years, and my parents transitioned. They transitioned 6 days apart. Mom went first, then 6 days later, my dad. They went to the hospital at the same time. And so on that morning, and I had planned, I was going to go see them in probably a week or so, but on that morning, it was about 6 in the morning, and I was awakened by my mom's voice, and she said, Bill, and then I, kind of woke up, and she said, get ready. And I still get chills because I can still hear what it sounded like. Get ready. Something big is about to happen. And that was it. Now, I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Sounds like my mom. And I got up and walked through the house because I thought maybe the girls something was going on. And so I checked on both of them. They both were in bed, so they were sleeping. It wasn't Mary Pat. And so, and I thought, I wonder if anything will happen today. I wonder what that means. Maybe just a dream, but I wasn't really asleep. I was awake at that point. And so sometimes things happen in our lives that we don't really understand. We can't explain it. And I would bet many of you have had experiences, if not like that, at least in some way that certain things happen and you really had no ability to know anything, to know what it means, or to be able to explain it. And so, how do we deal with something like that? How do we deal with a situation like that? And, what do we make of it? And if we can't understand it, does that mean it doesn't make any sense at all? If you think about a relationship with other people, if you have teenagers, or as a teen, if you have a parent, or if you have a partner, there are times when you don't have a clue what makes them tick. And you really wonder about that. You may even wonder about yourself sometimes. And so it's possible that we may not really understand our child or our parent or a partner or even ourselves, but at the same time, we can still have a really good, loving, open relationship. We can do that. It's sort of like electricity. We don't understand electricity fully, but we can flip the switch and get the lights on. And so it is when it comes to wisdom and knowing and opening to those kinds of things. Sometimes we don't fully understand it, and if someone asks us to explain it, we wouldn't really be able to explain how it happened or what it means, but it happens just the same. I've talked to a lot of people about it, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and probably more people experience it than even believe it. Because I've talked to people that say, well, I don't really believe in this kind of stuff, but, and then they tell a story. And if it's a choice in believing something or experiencing it, I would take experience anytime, wouldn't you? That's always better. Now, I'm not really concerned about where this wisdom and where this information comes from. I say I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned about it. I'm a little curious. But to me, it doesn't really matter what you call it. You could call it God. You could call it angels. You can call it departed spirits. You can call it higher being. You can call it inner being. You can call it the master of ceremonies from Atlantis, if you wish. You can call it a little blue alligator that lives in your backyard and he gives you information. I don't care what you call it. It doesn't matter what the source is called, what you name it. My question or my desire is to know, how can we deepen that information? How can we deepen and plug into that kind of wisdom and do it more often? Because I think all of us would like to be able to do that. And so You see, it's possible to accurately know something that you have no reason to know. And it's not intellectual. It's something mystical. Something else is happening. And it's like the musical ability. You know, some people are born with a lot of musical ability, like these guys. Some people are born with just a little. And some people would say, well, I wasn't born with any, but probably even you can turn the radio on and say, yes, I like that song. So it may be that talents and things like that, if we practice, it gets better. And I think this guidance, seeking guidance from Spirit is like that. If we practice, I think we'll learn more about how to tap into that wisdom. And it's not just for a few people. I mean, it's actually for all of us in this room to have that kind of a relationship. Now, here's the big picture. Let me make sure we got the big picture. Probably we're going to do it at the end. Here's what we're talking about. Overall, we're having a visioning session next Saturday, 1:15. So we're going to have another talk about some of this stuff. Then we're going to have lunch together. Hopefully you're going to bring some food. We're going to have lunch. Then at 1:15, we're going to build a circle in this room. And all of us are going to sit in a circle. And I really hope all of you will be there. Because the visioning is going to be about this community. But not just this community. It's going to be about your life. And let me tell you what visioning is. Michael Beckwith is a great guy. And he's written a book called Life Visioning. And we're using sort of some of his ideas. I recommend the book. It's a great, great book to have. But let me set it up. If I set it up this way, here's what I would say. I would say there's two steps. Step one, I'm going to call the creator step. We talked about it last week. The creator step has two stages. Stage one, stage two. Stage one, under creator, is I'm a victim. I wouldn't say it, of course, but I heard Andy say one day, my life sucks. I mean, he was having a lack of faith that day. And I'm just kidding. He didn't really say it, but he thought it. And so you get the idea. So stage one, as a creator, is you think, my life is not working. Why are people doing this to me? Why is life doing this to me? Stage one, creator. Second stage is where you say, wait a minute, I'm a creator. I can cause something good to happen. I don't have to take this stuff. And so you begin to create, and you use the law of attraction, and you begin to use all of those spiritual principles, and you're having a great time. Now, all of that comes under creator. You know, we don't want to stop there, but that's a nice thing to be doing. But now we move to the other major point. Creator, number one. Number two, channel. Now, a creator is talking almost all the time. They're asking. They've read, ask and it shall be given. And so guess what they're doing? Asking. They're talking all the time. They're putting up vision boards. I want this, and I'd like to have this, and I wish I could have this. But then you reach a certain point, and you begin to move into the channel stage of life. And at the channel stage of life, you stop talking. You're no longer asking for anything, except you're saying, thy will be done. At this stage, and again, there's two stages under this main phase here. And the first one would be, oh Lord, oh Lord, help me. Help me, help me, help me. And then you say, I'm tired of saying that. Instead, I'm going to say, use me. Oh, yeah. Use me. Help me to love my neighbor. Come through me and love my neighbor. Come through me and so I can forgive somebody. And so now you're not really asking for things for yourself, but now you're saying, use me. Thy will be done. Make use of me. I want my life to make a difference in the world. You get it? What you're doing is you're saying, I'm a channel. The Native American would say, I'm a hollow bone. Spirit just flow through me. There's two stages under this phase too, just like under the first one. And so under this one, you're a channel. And the first phase, or the stage, is when you It's almost like I'm here and God is over there, and I say, hey, come over here and use me. And you may even feel like God somewhere out here is coming and using you. But then what happens, as you continue to work with that for a while, it deepens. And so at first you're doing things, loving and doing things, and you're feeling like God's using me. And then you get this sneaky feeling, maybe it's not God over there, or God up there, or God down there using me. God's actually inside of me. In fact, it's not that Spirit is somewhere else. I'm Spirit. So when I love, I'm actually being who I am. When I forgive, I'm actually being who I am. It's not I'm doing a favor for another outside being, but it's inside me. And so there you got it. You got the whole deal. You got the Creator, those two little stages under that, victim, and then I'm going to create what I want. And then under channel, you've got this outside being using you, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait, this outside being is not outside, it's actually who I am. And so that's the deal. So in visioning, we're going to focus on channeling. You know, I'd like to say I want to teach you how to channel, but that will be spooky to some people. Some people get very scared about that. Ooh, that's scary. Inviting something in to speak through me. Ooh, voodoo. Scary. So we're not going to talk about it like that. We're going to talk about it as if what we're going to do is open our lives up to Spirit. We're going to open our minds, open our hearts. And so that's what the visioning session is about. And when we do that, we're going to say, what would Spirit have us do as a community? But then I want you to learn to be able to ask, what does Spirit want in your life? And see, that's something everybody wants to know. People meet with me a lot and they'll say, I just want to know what God's will is for my life. I just want to have guidance. I'm looking for clarity. And so that's what the visioning session is all about. And so we're going to do that next week. But let me give you some clues right now. Let me tell you some things that can help you plug in to this energy that you can't explain, but that will give you wisdom beyond what you know. The first thing it takes, I think, is openness and curiosity. Are you open? Are you interested in knowing guidance beyond just you? Are you curious about it? And so I would say that's the first thing. And that leads into, this is what's not easy for us to do, but it leads into the idea of listening. And that's hard for us to listen sometimes. You can imagine someone standing in front of you, a person, and they're talking and your ego's in the way, so you're not really listening. Or maybe your ego's not in the way, but they bore you to death. And you can see their mouth moving and you know sounds are coming out, but you're not listening. And in some cases, as they talk, you're so skeptical about every word they say, you just don't believe anything they say. And so, coming at it like that, nothing much is going to happen at all because you're not listening. But we do the same thing with Spirit. We often don't listen. You know, we talk more. We don't listen that much. And so the first major thing we want to do, we want to be open, we want to be curious, and we want to listen. Second major thing, and this comes from a Russian mystic back about 100 years ago. He said this is a great statement. He said, many people find prayer ineffective. And the reason is because they don't take time to align themselves with Spirit. They attune or align themselves with fear, aspirations, needs, desires, but not Spirit itself. And so number one, you want to say, okay, I'm ready to listen. And number two, you want to kind of get into the mood. Guys, Valentine's Day is coming. And if you've got, now you can go the other way too, if you're the woman too, but I just talk to the guys. If you're going to be romantic, you're going to have to get into the mood. Mood is important. And if you don't believe me, whoever your partner happens to be, man or woman, ask them. Is mood important, Bob? Mood's important. That's right. And so you've got to get the mood going. Alignment is the mood. It means you say, I'm ready to listen to Spirit. Now I'm going to get into the mood to listen. And so that means you get quiet, you meditate for a while, you get into the atmosphere of being willing to listen to something that is beyond your intellect and your understanding. And so the mood is important. And the third thing you want to do, let me give you one other quote here, though, before I move. Thomas Merton, who's a Trappist monk, he said, many people have enough faith to pray, but few have enough faith to listen and align. And so that's really important. Listen and align into the mood. And the third thing you've got to be willing to do is you've got to be willing to suspend your non-belief. Because many of us would think, I don't think that's going to happen. If God's going to talk, He ain't going to talk to me. He might talk to somebody else. And so many times we have doubts. And so what it means is in that mood, in that space, you're willing to at least give up the skepticism for a little bit of time. So that makes sense so far? So you got all three? I gave you three, right? Okay. So you got the three things down. And now with those three things in mind, let me give you some real practices how to do it. I could call this how to channel, but I wouldn't want to scare you. So I'll call it how to get in touch with Spirit. That sounds better. I'll give you 3 or 4 methods. Method 1. Susan, you ready?
Yeah.
Method 1 is, practice 1 is questioning. That's right. One easy way to do it is you simply get quiet, you're open, you put away your doubt for a little bit, you bring it back out later. And you get quiet and you say, okay, what do I do now? And you listen. Now this is going to take some practice. You can say, which direction do I go with this one? And you wait patiently. And you're receptive. The Quakers call this holding the question. So you've got the question and you're holding it. Now you're not struggling with it. You're not trying to force it. You're not pushing it. You ask it and you go, and you wait. And then as we do that, often, unless we're too noisy inside, or maybe it's just not time for an answer on this specific thing, but an answer, an idea will come to you. It may come in the form of a picture. It may come because you'll think of a movie you've seen, or a TV show you used to watch. And the little kid says to the character in the TV something, and you think, oh, that's the answer. Or maybe later in the day you're reading a book and there's a sentence that just kind of pops out. That's the answer. Or maybe a stranger walks up to you and just says something and it hits you. You ever watch House on TV? You know, House, I sort of enjoy House, and you know, he's just a wild, crazy guy. But you know, he'll just be doing something, somebody will be doing something, and then he goes, you seen him do that? I mean, just something happened, and then all of a sudden this idea hits him. He could be eating a banana, and it hits him. Somebody says something that has nothing to do with anything, and it hits him, and then he does this thing with his eyes like, oh. And that's what you'll do. It will just happen. It may come to you in a dream 2-3 days later. But what are you doing? Holding the question. Now there's a catch-22 to this, because if you're really skeptical, like me, then it means you ask and then you say to yourself, but I ain't going to get no answer. And you're kind of thinking that. Because you really have to begin to get answers before you have faith to know that you're going to get an answer. But in order to get the answer, you're going to have some faith. You see the catch-22? So let me tell you how to ease into it. Because I had to ease into it. You sort of crawl into it like a snake into water. Slither into it. This is how to develop some faith. What you do is you take a half a day. If you can, you could take just a couple hours. And you are going to ask questions and follow guidance. You're going to learn how to use guidance. Most of us don't do this because we're too compulsive. We're too structured. We're too obsessive to do it. So it's a new way to do it. Now, I did this, you knew I did it. Yeah, that's right. And so I did this 2 or 3 months ago, and we were on vacation. Mary Pat was taking a golf lesson. She loves the golf. Yeah. So she was doing that, and she was going to be gone for 4 or 5 hours. And so I thought, well, what can I do for 4 or 5 hours? I can just do anything I want. And so I thought, I'll play with this a little bit. And so I said, okay, what would be good to do? And then immediately the impression came to my mind, ride a bike. Well, the game you play is you do exactly what comes to you. And so you go and I got a bike, rented the bike, and then I said, which way should I go? Immediately the answer came, left. Now it didn't come from the sky, but it just felt left. So I went left. Came to a T-stop, and I said, which way do I go now? I'm thinking left, right. And the impression was, go back the way you just came. Well, that's a peculiar thing to do, but you don't have anything else to do, so I'll do that. And now it's beginning to get fun. And then I'm going along, and then the impression was, here's a lake, stop at the lake and crawl up on that rock and just let the sun shine on you for a while. Okay. Now see, normally I wouldn't do that at all. If I had that thought, I'd say, oh, that's silly. But now, what I'm doing is practicing, so I got on the rock, laying there. Then I had the impression, no, because I had a thought. I'd like to get in that lake. And the thought was, alligators are in that lake, don't get in the lake. And then I thought, well, I wonder if alligators are really in the lake. I looked around, and there were 2 eyes looking at me. And so I thought, oh, this guidance thing, it's fun. And so that's what you do. You do it for half a day. You do it for a few hours, because what you want to do is get familiar enough with it that you don't feel crazy doing it. Once you get familiar with it, then you can use it for some advanced strategies, like, should I take this job or not? Should I get married or not? Should I run from this relationship or not? And you'll begin to ask. And the funny thing is, if you do that, answers will begin to come to you. And you got to take it lightly. Teacher told me one time, care, but not too much. That's good advice. Because if we care too much, we're attached. It will cause suffering. And so with this, you care, but not too much. You're just kind of playing around with it and just kind of using it, and you'll see what comes up. Now, as you do this, if you're really good at visualizing images, you can visualize an image. Now this gets a little spooky, but you got to use your imagination with this, see? Because as you use your imagination, you give room for Spirit to come and speak to you. So Hindus are good at this. Hindus have thousands of gods. You know, they have God with all these arms. They have a God with an elephant that will remove obstacles. Now, they don't really think that there's a God sitting up in the sky with an elephant head. They don't believe that, but they found that people have a hard time envisioning oneness. A very old religion, they found that it's hard sometimes to imagine what spirit would look like. So for beginners, they give different aspects of God, and they give it images so people can look at that and begin to kind of move in that direction. So that helps some people. For example, you know, when I was doing some shamanism things, I started out with a spirit guide, and I maybe mentioned before, but had a spirit guide, and it was a deer. I did not want a deer. I wanted a bear, tiger, lion, something with teeth, something that was strong. Give me a bear. And the answer was, you need a deer, my friend. And so I thought, okay, I can accept that. And so there's a deer. And so I would imagine at night I'd wake up and I would see the deer, and the deer would use its hoof, and you'll think this is crazy, and it would write on the wall. That's wacky. Well, if anybody else is there, like remember that time you were there, and you said, ain't nothing on that wall. But see, I could see it. Something else, because I'm so skeptical, I'm just telling you the truth here, it was writing words. And I would ask questions and words would come on the wall. I don't think I've told you this before. You're never going to come back here. It put certain words up there, and they were not English words. And I said, hey, what does that word mean? And he said, that word is shahampi. What does that mean? And the deer said, deers can talk, you see, in your imagination. And the deer said, that means sweet tree. And that had significance to me. I thought, shahampi. I was living in Raleigh, and I went to the university, State University. I looked up that word. It was really a word. I didn't know it was a word, but it was a word, and it came from the Lakota Sioux language. Okay, so now my skepticism is shaky. So then I look up the definition. Guess what it meant? Sweet tree. Two words put together, sweet tree. And I thought, right, this deer thing is cool. Now, was there really a deer there? Was I losing my mind? No, see, what you want to do is open in your imagination and allow Spirit to come to you any way that you wish. For you, it may be Mother Mary may walk in and say, I got something to tell you. Or it may be Jesus. It may be Buddha. It may be a grasshopper. It could be anything. You don't understand it. What you're doing is opening up to it. Okay. Then, after a few months, the deer became a person. That's weird, isn't it? It became a Native American grandfather figure, which reminded me of my grandfather in the physical that had died a long time ago. But it reminded me of that a bit. And I'm telling you, this deer, or the grandfather character, who was named Swift Deer, was so much smarter than me. And I would ask questions and get answers that were really wise. Now, I could be saying the same story and use Jesus. In fact, sometimes I thought grandfather was Jesus. And then, after a few years of practicing this and working with a teacher, I began to ask, is this grandfather really an entity separate from me? Or is it me? Is it just my higher self? In fact, is it my divinity talking to me? And it came to me in the form of a deer because that would grab my attention more than perhaps a Buddha. I decided that's true. I decided that actually all of us are one. Divinity indwells every person here. And divinity comes to you in a way that you can hear and understand. And in my case, that's how it happened. And it's funny because at first it was very separate from me. It was an animal. But then it moved closer and it became my grandfather. And then it moved closer and it was actually me the entire time. But I'm telling you, I got wisdom from that. I was going to say that being, but that wouldn't be right. I got wisdom from within myself that I never knew I had. You people are much smarter than you think. The shaman would say, here's a dream. Or somebody would say to the shaman, here's a dream. What do you think that means? And the shaman wouldn't tell you what it means. The shaman would say, what do you think it means? Very cagey. And you say, well, I don't know. If I knew, I wouldn't be asking you. And then, you know what he said? Well, if you knew what it meant, what would it be? And then I gave the answer. So I would say that to you. You come to a situation, you don't know what to do. Well, what do you think Buddha would do? What do you think Jesus would say? What do you think Mother Teresa would do with these 3 children that are driving you crazy? What would she do? And you can use images like that to plug into what? You. Your higher self. Because your higher self is with you all the time. You may not be able right now to say, I want to speak to my higher self, please. And so you may have to use a grandmother. You may have to use a grandfather in order to get in touch. But I'm telling you, you are much wiser than you know because the Holy Spirit lives in you. That is some pretty good stuff. Let me see, what else do I want to say? Let me see, anything else? Yeah, talk about grandfather. So you've got to use your imagination. You do want to use your imagination. And let me give you one other example of this. Suppose you've got a conflict with somebody, and it's not pretty. I mean, you've been screaming at each other. Can anybody identify with that? I know all of you are very spiritual. Suppose you're really mad at somebody. Somebody's really giving you the silent treatment. Did you see on TV the commercial where the lady calls the guy and he's just hanging out and she calls and she says, I'm giving you the silent treatment. And then he says, I don't think you really understand that because you're calling me. Hello? Hello? And then she's just kind of smiling. So sometimes in relationships, things aren't going well. Sometimes there's yelling. Sometimes there's silent treatments and all of this stuff. So here's what you do. If you're having conflict at work or any situation, again, you use your imagination because that opens you up. And what you do is you imagine that you're in that situation, the conflict is taking place, and the doorbell rings. And as soon as it rings, everything freezes. Boom. Except you. So, he's here, she's here, or all these people are here. They're all fighting. There's anger in the room, tension in the room. Everything freezes. You go answer the door, and guess who it is? Jesus. Or Gandhi. Anyone that you'd like to have as your teacher who epitomizes wisdom has come to see you. And they say, hi, Bill. Hey, Gandhi. Are you having some problems? Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. And so we chat. And then after that's over, I say, man, thank you. He takes off. I close the door, come back in. The situation is still frozen in my mind. And then I step into it and everything starts again. And now in that scene, I have a fresh connection to God, to wisdom, to spirit. And I know exactly what to say. And then the whole room is filled with love and peace. And then I say, okay, I'm ready. Tomorrow at the office, that's what I'm going to do. And the wisdom is there. Now, you knew that the whole time. It was always inside of you, but you have to use your imagination a bit in order to really get that done. Now, does that make sense or not? Okay. Let me give you a couple cautions, and then I'll give you the conclusion. Caution number 1, when you get your guidance, it may only be for this moment. Like you can't, it's like manna in the Old Testament. They wanted to get manna, and they got it that day. And then they decided they would save it up for the next day. When they did that, it developed worms. Nothing worse than manna with worms. Wisdom, you don't want to get wisdom for a rainy day. You want wisdom right now. Give it to me now. And the wisdom comes. And the wisdom today is run from that situation. This guy is bad news. Now tomorrow it may say, don't run from this situation. Communicate it. And so wisdom can change from day to day. So when the wisdom comes, use it in that day. Realize that it doesn't apply to every situation. Sometimes it will say you need to be more assertive. Other times it will say you need to start just going along to get along. And so wisdom changes from time to time. You know, the Bible says there's a time for every purpose under heaven. And that's absolutely right. So when you're seeking wisdom, you're seeking it for the moment. Does that make sense? Okay. Don't want to save it up. Now, if you're going through some hard time, it's okay to seek wisdom often. And I'm telling you, there's all kinds of ways to do it. there's such a variety. But you want to use your God-given imagination. You want to be open. You want to be curious. You want to let your skepticism go by. And you'll be amazed at the wisdom that bubbles out of you. Caution number 2 is, and hopefully this is pretty apparent, but sometimes it's not. Some of us carry baggage. Some of us are really damn angry about stuff. You wouldn't believe what my mother did to me. You wouldn't believe what my father did to me. And what I did is I put it in a suitcase and I buried it inside my heart. And so I'm walking around with repressed anger, hostility, feelings. And so sometimes when you seek guidance, the guidance may say, well, just go slap him. So you got to use your mind and say, now, is this from my repressed feeling suitcase, or is this from something higher? If your wisdom tells you to go hurt somebody, that's not spirit. If it blows your ego up, inflates it, not spirit. If it tells you to violate your own values, probably not spirit. So you still have to use your mind as you look at the answers that you get. But the wisdom is amazing. And so you say, well, how do I deal with this mess? And then you wait and see what comes and what it tells you. The thought may come to you, get out of here. But see, that could be divine wisdom, or that could be just your fearful reaction, because that's what you always do. You always run. So you got to pause, you got to think, you got to consider the whole deal. What it really comes down to, my brothers and sisters, is this. Everything that I've said comes down to this: attitude. Guidance is about attitude. It's about, I want deeper wisdom. But let me tell you what happens that's so sweet. This is just, and I think you'll understand what I mean if I can verbalize it in the best possible light. Suppose I have a problem. I'm seeking wisdom. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do A or should I do B? I don't know. I'm seeking wisdom. But then as I do that, and I'm quiet, meditating, feel Spirit moving within me, feeling good, feeling like a channel, all of a sudden I begin to think, this is so beautiful. I don't really care if I do this or that. God, I love this intimacy with God. The guidance was just something to help me get closer to my own divinity. And once I'm closer to my own divinity, the guidance doesn't even matter that much. Do you know what I'm talking about? Some of you are shaking your head and some of you are going, what? See, it's almost like, a parent would say, well, if you want this, you come and talk to me. And so the parent's going to give it to you anyway, but they're doing that so that you'll come and you'll spend time with them. And so that's kind of what happens with Spirit. And then you find out that Spirit was actually you the entire time. And so the guidance, having these dilemmas and these problems and these issues, weren't really about any of that. It was just to help you feel Spirit in your life. So it actually turns out to be such a beautiful thing. And then you end up saying, wow, thank you for this problem. It really helped me a lot. As we close, I'm going to ask Pearlie, who is a fabulous minister. I'm going to ask her to come, and she's going to lead us. She's going to do a little brief reading for us that ties these things together, and then she's going to ask us to do some affirmations. And it all pulls all of this together, and then then we're done. And then we're going to have our prosperity celebration, right? Yep. And so she's going to do this reading, and that's going to pull it together. And she's going to ask us to do some affirmations with her. Now, this is very important, because what's going to happen is our hearts will open wider as we listen to her talk. Whatever you feel, which one should you do? Whichever one you feel led to do. Pearlie, how many of you heard Pearlie speak a few weeks ago? She'll be on YouTube soon, maybe even now, so you can plug into that. But boy, that was fantastic, because I wasn't here, but I watched it.
Thank you.
So what are you led to tell us today?
I am led to share with you a reading from the Gospel of John. I believe this is as interpreted by Bill. Jesus said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, trust the divinity within yourself. There are many dimensions in spirit dwelling. You are one of those dwellings. And as one of those dwellings of spirit, you are fully included in all that is God. Good is continually being created for you. You, spirit, and I are one. There is no separation between spirit and you, and spirit and others. All are one. All are included. Whenever you need guidance, remember it is as close as your breathing. The Spirit of truth lives within you. The Spirit within you will teach you all things and will remind you of anything you need to remember. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You are well taken care of. You are loved and protected, my cherished friend. My one request is that you allow your divinity to shine through your life. That's why you are here." Now, Bill mentioned, wanted me to lead you in some affirmations, and I will read one and then ask you to repeat after me, so if everyone will please stand as we do this. The Spirit of beauty lives in me.
The Spirit of beauty lives in me.
This spiritual community has everything it needs to fulfill its mission on this planet.
This spiritual community has everything it needs to fulfill its mission on this planet.
That was pretty good. I am wholly inspired and duly empowered to reveal heaven on earth today.
I am wholly inspired and duly empowered to reveal heaven on earth today.
You didn't think you were going to have a memory test. My every experience is an opening to greater and greater good.
My every experience is an opening to greater and greater good.
My life is guided and directed by let's start that again. My life is guided and directed by the all-wise Spirit.
My life is guided and directed by the all-wise Spirit.
In gratitude, I let it be, and so it is.
In gratitude, I let it be,